We got this story from CNN. You love CNN, don't you? Pride Month backlash hurt Target's sales. They fell for the first time in 6 years. You know, I just want to say this real quick. This is partly why they're so heavily coming after Trump. Their cultural endeavors are failing. Target's quarterly sales fell for the first time in 6 years. And it's as consumers pulled back on discretionary goods and fierce right-wing backlash to their Pride Month collection. Target's stock dropped 27% over the past year. This is amazing stuff. Culturally, the right is winning. It doesn't necessarily, I guess at this point, post-liberals, former liberals are now considered right-wing. With a song like "Rich Men North of Richmond," how many? I'm going to look this up. How many views?
Like 5 million.
17 million.
One.
I saw 17.
Where did you see 17?
On YouTube.
On YouTube?
Yeah.
Right, and then you've got all the different Twitter videos with 10 million here.
Mm-hmm.
You type in "Rich" and the song pops up right away. "Rich Men North of Richmond," 16 million views in a week.
Wow.
16 million views in a week. 16.6 million views. Amazing. Some dude singing a song about corrupt government, failed policies, and he's just got a guitar and he's just singing and it's nailing it. Sound of Freedom just passed Indiana Jones on a small budget. They just did a press release. Angel Studios did a press release saying all of their investors just got a 120% return.
Wow.
Oh, that is awesome.
That's
Massive.
incredible.
Makes sense
so
considering it was a
good.
$15 million budget that pulled in $170 some odd million.
Yeah. Man.
So I think that's what the press release said. 100. Let me quadruple check here. I'm not sure if it was 20% on top. Like they put in 100 and
Yeah,
they got
I'm
back
wondering.
120.
This is, I don't think that it's, I don't think that it's the right wing that's winning.
Okay, so
cultural-
I'm sorry. It's their original investment plus 20%. So they got a 20% return. That's
great.
still absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and
You go to someone and say, I can get you a 20% return in 2 years. People are going to be, that's really good.
especially for producing a good movie on top of it, like a good product, so you can feel good about the money that you made.
So while those good things are happening, Bud Light lost $400 million.
And what I think it is this anti-authoritarian movement that's winning, this libertarian movement. It's not necessarily the Libertarian Party, but it's this libertarian conception. People are tired of authoritarian crap, like finding out about the government, like all this CRISPR, not CRISPR, but like, the PRISM program that Edward Snowden blew open, and like just finding about all this like totalitarian crap behind the scenes with the CIA and the NSA and all this junk since 9/11. People are tired of that, and they're pushing back against the corporate government collusion, this fascist crap.
I think COVID did it.
And they call it right wing, but that's a misnomer, man. It is people that just do not want a top-down authority commanding our lifestyle. And COVID had a huge part to play in that. It woke people up.
I agree.
They were forced to look at things.
I think the COVID lockdowns did it for a lot of people. They went nuts, and there's a viral video going around now from a dude who participated in the BLM riots, saying that it was one of the stupidest and cringiest things he's ever done. Yeah, because now he's been realizing what's going on. The smartest thing I think I've heard someone say is to say, "What can we do? How do we win?" We always say on the show, like, engage in culture, build culture, share culture. And then someone said something brilliant on Twitter. I think Mike Cernovich retweeted it. It was, sell them on Twitter and X. Convince them to sign up for it. That's the easiest thing to do, because you don't need to say Trump is good. You don't need to say RFK is good. You don't need to say Vivek is good. You don't need to say DeSantis is good. You need only say, hey, you should sign up on Twitter and we can chat and share memes. And then they're like, oh, okay. Then they'll start seeing the retweets. They'll see the news clips. They'll see Joe Biden say, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting $1 billion. Then they'll see CNN say it never happened, and they'll go, what? But I watched that video. That's the thing. Convince all of your friends to sign up for X. That's the path. X.com.
I would like to
say, oh boy, it's so fun. I got paid. Elon Musk gave me $100 because I was complaining about stuff. How fun.
I was thinking we should have on the show at some point, like somebody that's deep in the deep state that wants, to talk about it. There must be somebody that's like, tell us why, because you guys are listening right now. Why do you think why is it good? Why is this? I understand, like, you don't want terrorism. You don't want Timothy McVeigh to get unlimited amounts of electricity so that he does the most giant explode. Like, I understand that, but like, what aspect of like trying to clamp down do you think is better for our society as a whole? I want to know. I want to talk about it.
I can explain it probably in a rudimentary way that lacks a lot of information, and I'll explain it like this. Lil Luke and Roberto don't get along. We go in, we separate them, and we lock up Roberto Jr. He does not know why. We don't care if he knows why. We just want him to do what we want him to do because we want eggs, and that's it. And we want to be able to make more of the chickens later on. The chickens are probably sitting there being like, they're coming here and separating us. One chicken's like, they're stealing our children and eating them. And they're like, oh, here they go with egg gate again. Omelet gate. No one's stealing your babies and eating them. That's an insane conspiracy theory, chicken. My point is, these people in the deep state, they don't care what you have to say. They don't care what I have to say. They care only that their machine functions in the way they want it to function, like a chicken coop. They wake up in the morning, there's fresh eggs, they get to eat them. In their mind, it's the machine operates, they get big penthouses, they get to control military power all over the world, and they don't want to deal with China pushing back on them. In some instances, they are working with China. I think the reality is the World Economic Forum, Western powers, NATO, Europe, and the US found out that very quickly the Chinese communist method was preferable. So there is a conflict between the West and China, but these WEF elites and many prominent position people in the US politics would prefer a Chinese communist system in the United States.
I was just listening to James Lindsay on Josie Redheaded Libertarians X Space on last Sunday, and James was explaining like it's come to the point where these terms neo-fascist, communist, neo this, neo, like don't use the word neo, just call it communist. But even then, it's like when you really ask these guys that are trying, like, what do you want your new government to be? They're like, you know what? I don't even care as long as my son is on top. They don't. So,
it's Goblin King at this point. It's just people who use power to gain power and screw everybody else. That's why you see people running through the streets, smashing cars, breaking into stores, stealing whatever they want, because it's raw power time.
Yeah, and they're afraid of any institution that would threaten that, like, the traditional family unit or nationhood and being proud of your country and being, bonded to your fellow countrymen. They're afraid of those forces, so they've sought to suppress them. That's why when you have someone like Nayib Bukele or Donald Trump, who is a nationalist figure, they yell fascism at them and try to use every force they can to cancel them and to silence them because they are scared of those forces because they threaten their power, because a family collected with other families could be more powerful. A nation can be more powerful than them, and that's scary to them.
What do you think of Nayib Bukele, the president of
I think
El
he's
Salvador?
A hero. I think he has saved his country. Absolutely. I mean, he single-handedly wiped out the most satanic gangs in the Western Hemisphere in one foul swoop. And now El Salvador is becoming a wonderful place to live again. It's a safe place to live. Businesses are going there. It's incredible.
What did he do with the cartels? Is that what they were? What did he do?
Jail.
Like,
yeah,
when was it?
Locked them all up.
What I saw like 3-4 weeks ago, they mobilized like their military and like surrounded a bunch of stuff. Was that what you're talking about? Like in one moment, he had them all taken or something?
Yeah, they've had a couple mass operations where they've gone and got these gangsters. But yeah, he's locked them up, and you hear folks in the Western media complain about due process and things like that. But when you have a country that is so destitute and with such rampant crime, you have to be aggressive and you have to use force in order to restore order. And he has had the guts to do that. A lot of people don't.
So you think there are people in the United States that have that mentality that they're like, we have to use force because they think it's that bad, or they're being led to believe it's that bad?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're quite at where El Salvador was when Nayib Bukele, took power and cleaned it up, but I think we're certainly getting there. And I think when you don't have order, when you have complete chaos, that can, lend itself to mob justice and things like that, and a strong man. So obviously that's not something that we necessarily want in this country, but if the right individual does it as Nayib has done for El Salvador, it can be, it can restore order and it can let your countrymen achieve prosperity again.
Had it been chaotic in El Salvador?
Oh yeah, their murder rate was some of the worst in the Western world.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now it's safer than most American cities in El Salvador.
Like over the course of like a year?
Yes.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Like I said, I was hanging out I was at MGM a couple months ago, playing poker of all things. And there was a dude who, when you're there, you're hanging out, you're talking to people. He mentioned that he was leaving soon. And I was like, oh, you're leaving the States? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to El Salvador. And I was like, oh, really? And he's like, I'm from there, but my family left, but now we're going back. And then I was like, oh, wow, why? And he's like, oh, it got really better, really good. Now it's safe. Yeah. Crazy. People who had left the country to move to the United States now want to go back. Also,
people complain about him being, a dictator and things like that, CNN, MSNBC, all those folks. But he's actually totally wiped out corruption in his country. He's limited government more than any Republican president in recent memory. He's totally shrunk, all of the power that the legislature was abusing, and he's really kind of just wiped out the swamp in many ways.
Is he like he was elected, and then so does he have a term limit?
I'm actually not sure. Not sure about El Salvador.
I got that kind of vibe in New York. Wasn't there in the 80s, but I got to New York in the early 2000s, and by that point, I guess Giuliani had cleaned it up. Like it was apparently hell on earth in the 80s, and then Giuliani.
That guy's financially ruined now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I just think, the powers that be don't want you to know that you can do what Nayib Bukele did or what Rudy Giuliani did. Like, we don't have to accept this decline or this chaos. We can totally reinstitute order. We just have elites currently that are unwilling to do it because they have no interest in that, right? They love this lawlessness. It lets them kind of do their deep state work while no one's noticing. And it oppresses people too, right? It's dehumanizing almost to live in these American cities that are rampant with crime, that are totally deteriorated. They want to keep your spirit down.
Yeah. You mean the leadership does to keep you
current elite
subservient?
class. Yes.
Yeah, because then your life sucks. If your life sucks every day, like you go down to like the street, you go to the shop, and then someone's stealing everything, and you're like, oh well, I've got all this money, I'm gonna spend it on this food. This guy just took it all for free. It really demoralizes you at a deep level after a little while,
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel like things are beginning to fall apart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you're less willing to like work for the system and then make it all work out.
Well, it's also simply this: things get so chaotic, people eventually just say, "For what reason am I risking my health and safety for this?
Right.
Yep.
I'm going to just do my own thing," and they give up.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "I would rather just plug myself back into the matrix and eat the steak and ignore all the problems."
To think that American leadership would let that happen just because, like, I want to think that they're overwhelmed and they can't stop it or they feel incapable.
Well,
not that they want it to happen so that they can strike with their Patriot Act, but
like current leadership would want it to happen, because if you don't want to go vote, then it'd be easier for them to potentially, get their person they would like in power if you don't go vote.
Do you think that the U.S. has like become like a political autocracy? Do you feel that way?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Here's a question for
Uniparty,
you.
You mean? I don't know.
Here's a question for you. There's a lot of people who are saying that we live in a simulation. A lot of these AI guys genuinely believe that we live in a simulation. They've tweeted about it where they're like, base reality. What was the tweet? The guy said base reality happened only one time, and this is not it or whatever. What if
he was wondering if he even ever existed in base reality or whatever?
That's
what if humans destroy the planet with pollution? Not like the Matrix with robots, but like let's just say the world becomes crap. It's garbage. There's mass pollution. You struggle to breathe. You're thin and frail. There's no food. It's overpopulated. So everybody plugs in to the simulation where you live this life instead. Would you choose to leave this fake reality of comfort, knowing that real base reality was horrifying and painful?
Oh.
Why? Why would you?
Well, are we able to help base reality from this reality?
This is the question about politics in general. It's a sci-fi analogy for, would you choose to engage in politics? What is it, better to be a fisherman than to engage in the politics of man, or whatever the quote is?
That was from the French Revolution. What was his name? The number 2 guy of the French Revolution. Better to be a poor farmer than to engage in the politics of man.
And he's basically saying, just give in.
He's like, I shouldn't have done. He's like, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have got involved.
The reason I disagree with that mentality is, let's say that we'll use the sci-fi analogy of being in a pod in a matrix. One day, all of a sudden, you start coughing up blood, and you're like, what's happening? I don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, you go blind in one eye, and you're like, you start shrieking and screaming. And then in base reality, there's a guy bludgeoning your pod with a mallet, screaming, and you can't see it, and you can't stop it, and you can't do anything about it. That's how I view politics. There are a lot of people who are like, who cares? Just ignore it. It's like, yes. And then one day a mob shows up and burns down your house, and you never saw it coming. You're ill prepared for it, and now you have to suffer the consequences in the worst ways imaginable. And for those that were prepared and built a little bunker with beans or something, they escaped long before it happened.
Or has a strong community. That's a
strong community. But those who prepared for the catastrophe before it happened are probably going to be okay. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.